change is inevitable. You're all looking in a direction that you're not used to looking. Can you adapt to it? You don't have to like it. You're entitled to complain, not that the universe will care a great deal about your complaints. It never has. But can you adapt? It's a critical question. On this day in 1809, Abraham Lincoln was born. And the nation will observe that on Monday, along with Washington's birthday. Here, we'll be honoring it with a whiteout blizzard. New England's ways are still a mystery to me. But today is also the birthday of another man whose life dramatically altered the world that we live in, Charles Darwin. Darwin was the grandson of two prominent English abolitionists. Both his mother's and father's families were mostly Unitarian. And at that time, not being a member of the Anglican Church was both a legal and social handicap in Britain. His father, Robert, was a freethinker, but a quiet one. He had Charles baptized an Anglican. But Charles and his siblings grew up attending a Unitarian chapel with their mother, Susanna. Darwin was a naturalist from an early age, fascinated by the natural world, from botany to geology. His father was a doctor, so he too studied medicine, but he was not drawn to medicine, finding lectures dull and surgery personally distressing. So his father urged him to prepare to become an Anglican vicar, a nice, safe, tenured position. As an adult, Darwin was an Anglican, but his life was full of Unitarians. Not only his family, his brother Erasmus was a well-known freethinker, a close friend of Harriet Martineau, a brilliant woman who is usually called the first female sociologist, the sister of James Martineau, a famous Unitarian of the time. Her writings, her explanation of Adam Smith's writings about capitalism, written for a popular audience, outsold the works of Charles Dickens for a time. And Dickens was, of course, the great lion of British literature at the time. This was the world that Charles Darwin moved in. Great minds, free thinkers, women who had, stepped well beyond their social roles of the time, persisting in doing what they knew they could do. Science, natural philosophy, free thinking, that was the crucible in which Charles Darwin's mind was shaped. During his studies, he became a friend and follower of botany professor John Stevens Henslow, and also met other parson naturalists who saw scientific work as religious natural theology. But when we think of Darwin, we think of his work developing the theory of evolution. It is important to note that this was not entirely a thunderbolt from the heavens. There were many others who had observed bits and pieces of this, that life was not a fixed thing, that animals appeared to transform and change. But Darwin was the man who pulled all the pieces together, took these different notions, added his own extensive observations, his own insights, and suggested mechanisms by which these changes could occur, how life evolved. And the world has never been the same. And 2 centuries later, we still tend to misunderstand evolution. We inherited from Darwin and Lincoln's time and from the 20th century, the notion that there is this natural progression forward, upward, that things are, well, we use the word evolving to mean that things are advancing, right? It's an idea that in the American Unitarian tradition was expressed by Reverend James Freeman Clark's very hopeful phrase summarizing the late 19th century Unitarian view of what we are and where we're going. The progress of mankind onward and upward forever. That's what we think of as evolution, right? We think of it as this arrow with a direction forward and up. Creatures evolve from lower to higher. But the truth is that evolution doesn't care. It doesn't care about higher or lower or progress. Evolution is about adaptation. It doesn't care if a species evolved from some small, inconsequential thing into something magnificent, amazing, and glorious. Evolution is driven by one thing: adaptation. It's about responding to and taking advantage of opportunity, of the conditions of the moment. Evolution is not progressive. It's ruthlessly opportunistic. Yes, it is. It's a sad thing, but it's true. Things happen and the sermon evolves. It has no direction. The sermon may or may not. Adaptation isn't about going from worms to mammals to apes to humans, although that is a description more or less of what happened. But evolution did not start out with humans in mind, or apes, or even mammals. Evolution is what happens in a universe where life exists in a vast casino, where the game keeps changing. The dice appear to be loaded and the cards are marked. Evolution is about odds and advantages. Here's an example. There is a genetic mutation that is extremely rare. It is believed to exist in only about 1 of every 10 million people. That means that there are, if I've done the math right, only about 1,000 people on the entire planet with this genetic mutation. Now, it appears to provide either a complete or nearly complete immunity to viruses. I don't know how you describe a greater, clearer advantage. It's so advantageous that it ought to have spread widely. We should all have it. Those of us who are vulnerable to colds and everything else that viruses bring us should have gone extinct. But, you see, there's a downside. Something about that mutation also causes people who have it to have terrible convulsions and die. It's like one of those apparent wonder drugs that we hear about. Unfortunately, the side effects appear to be so awful that no one should take it. Now, evolution suggests that either this mutation will be weeded out because of its side effect, which is certainly not worth having, or by chance, someone who has it will have it combined with some other mutation that tempers its bad effects. We tend to think of evolution as choosing one of these. But it doesn't. It's just rolling those dice over and over, and one of those things or something else will happen. Evolution is not conscious. It doesn't have a will. It's just playing the game. Another example. There's a gene called Huntington. We all have it. It's critically important to the development of the nervous system before birth. Creatures that have it in very, very simple form do not have complex neural systems. But there is a section of it where 3 of the possible nucleotides, which we call C, A, and G, repeat in that order, C, A, G, but we don't all have the same number of repeats. People who have CAG repeat from 8 to 35 times appear to have normal health. If you have more than 35, you will eventually develop the terminal disease called Huntington's disease. The neurons that control body motion and our ability to think, our higher cognitive functions, are damaged. They die. So scientists are trying to figure out how these high repeat versions cause this disease. They hope to figure out how some medication might halt the progress of that disease. It's not that uncommon. It affects about 1 of every 10,000 people in Europe and America. So if it's so destructive, why is it so common? Why haven't those high repeat versions of the gene weeded themselves out? Well, you see, it turns out that high repeat versions of that gene promote the functioning of neurons. More CAG repeats mean that your neurons work better, as long as the repeats don't exceed 35. It's kind of like a speed limit with a very harsh policeman involved. Evolution is at work. It's encouraging high CAG repeats up to that limit. Don't exceed it. But since evolution isn't conscious, it doesn't recognize that limit. It keeps testing that limit. Evolution is not an option. It's adaptation. All life adapts to its conditions or it dies off. Evolution keeps playing the game. It has no directive purpose. It's not trying to go somewhere. It's trying to go anywhere and everywhere. The evolutionary steps that go somewhere, anywhere, that pan out continue. If 1 extra CAG repetition is good, how about 2? How about 3, 4, 5? And when those steps don't work, then evolution doesn't stop. It just keeps playing the game, waiting to see what happens, playing endlessly. Think of it as water trying to go downhill. It doesn't care what path it takes. It doesn't care what course it goes by, what it carves out, what damage it does. It doesn't care if it goes downhill in a pipe. It just responds to the pull of gravity. Biological evolution is similar. It is life responding to the circumstances and conditions of the world. It doesn't work on individuals. We are what we are. It works on groups. We tend to think of ourselves as having somehow set ourselves outside of natural selection and evolution and adaptation. That's an illusion. It's a fantasy. Just because we cannot see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Evolution is still rolling the dice. Something is happening. Something will happen. Now, evolution developed creatures that work well together in groups. Individuals cooperate. They look out for each other. They help each other out. They take care of children. They take care of each other's children. They don't care if they're making any noise. That's the future. The future is noisy. The future needs to be noisier. And we can easily think of such creatures, whether they stay together in herds for safety or in packs to help each other hunt. We're one such creature, and we evolved to function well in groups of 100 to 150 people. Beyond that, we don't have the capacity to really know each other, to know more people, to work well with them. They become a sort of faceless mass, which is challenging for congregations that grow that way. They have to figure out new mechanisms. We function, however, in societies and groups that are much larger than 150 people. We function in societies of hundreds of millions of people. Without having developed any new biological skills to function with so many people, we have developed a whole new set of non-biological skills, society. They are not in our genes. We learn them. There are various sets of rules for societies, too. They are not all the same. It's like different genes, different mutations. And evolution is at work there, too. It is just playing the game, and it doesn't care where it plays it. What works, what doesn't. What can adapt to this situation and these conditions, and what can't, and dies off. Because of society, because of our tool use and language, we have adapted to almost every climate in the world, including ones that we are not biologically suited to, like the one that we're in. Humanity has turned out to be superbly adaptable, able to adapt itself to a wide range of conditions. But that does not mean that we can adapt to survive in every imaginable condition. Our success may, like the repeating CAG in Huntington, have some natural limit, where the very thing that makes us so successful becomes deadly. Our ability to extract energy from the things around us, from other creatures, from their muscles, from wind, water, sunlight, those are a clever breakthrough. But using that same ability to extract energy from fossil fuels and fission, both of those threaten to so badly damage the environment that it may put our species' survival at risk. Evolution doesn't care. It's playing the game, it's rolling the dice. What works? What doesn't? What does this roll of the dice, that turn of the card do? Evolution doesn't care about an individual, or a species, or even all of life. It's a mechanism. Adapt or die. So for us, the great questions revolve around our adaptation, our ability to see the consequences of our actions and our social adaptations. If burning fossil fuels is going to put us at risk, and it is, then we should stop. That would be an adaptive behavior. Seeing the cliff ahead, we could turn aside instead of rushing straight out over it. Or, seeing the inability of a form of government or an economic system, the instability of them, we could choose to alter them or to try new ones. None of them are ordained by nature or God. Government and economics are human creations, part of the social technology we created as a way to adapt and evolve more quickly. I never mentioned it by name, because what we operate under is not capitalism. Capitalism is an economic theory, a model designed and described by Adam Smith just as communism is an economic theory and model that was designed by Karl Marx. Marx's analysis of the defects of the industrial capitalism that he saw, well, it was pretty good. But his prescription for an economic system in society is a fantasy, an idea that depends on human nature and behavior being something different than it is. And so it fails. Unfortunately, Smith's capitalism also depends on theoretical fantasies and requires people and the universe operate in ways that they simply don't. And what we operate under? It's not even capitalism. Smith's capitalism insisted that for-profit corporations were a destructive abomination. They should be banned. We encourage them. Many admire them. Smith's so-called free market was a highly regulated place, regulated by the government, to ensure that commerce was fair, that it occurred on a level playing field where everyone had free and full access to all the information that they needed about anything they bought or sold. I don't know about you, but I buy all kinds of things all the time, things I need, without being able to tell things that I'd like to know. The information isn't available. Businesses often do not want to tell you things about their products, or they simply lie. Whether you think organic food is crucial or nonsense, it's something that a consumer should by right be able to know about. Certainly in a truly capitalist society. Is this product organic or not? But we have laws in place that allow and even help corporations hide that information. We don't have capitalism. Our system, whatever it is, and I'd have called it crony corporate capitalism, although it seems to be aspiring to become fascist capitalism, is not Smith's capitalism. It is not a good, humane system designed for people, which Smith was trying to do. It doesn't seek to provide for the needs of the people. It devours people. And in fact, we know it's unhealthy, even for the very rich. There are studies showing that in countries with high levels of inequality, like the United States, the wealthy suffer from worse health than the wealthy in countries with very low levels of inequality. Although they have the money and the access, the ability to get all of the health care that they could want, the wealthy from unequal nations have worse health and die earlier than the wealthy in less unequal nations. Our economic system kills and injures everyone. The wealth of the wealthy cannot buy them well-being. Our system, whatever we call it, is doing that to them. We deserve to have better, and given what we know, it's possible for us to choose to adapt our social conditions. We can choose to develop a different economic system, one that's better for all of us. We can try to develop a more resilient and more stable form of democracy. It won't happen as a biological evolution. It will have to be through social adaptations, rather conscious ones. We will be performing the equivalent of gene modification therapy on our societies if we do this. It will be semi-directed adaptation. It will be trying to give evolution a degree of awareness, creating a sort of artificial intelligence in our own evolutionary process. And I don't think we really have a choice. Sometimes we do not have a choice. You come to the service and the chairs are in some funny arrangement and the minister is preaching in the wrong place. You didn't have a choice. Things are just the way they are. Some of you are quite annoyed by it. but you had no control over it. You've adapted. The chair of your worship committee wants it this way for another week. He has some reason that you'll see next week. And after that, we'll change back, or change somehow. But the evolutionary choice is adapt or die. I believe that most of us will choose to try to adapt, rather than to cling to the unmodified originalist American democracy and crony corporate capitalism. Because the alternative is simple. It is death for the republic, death for democracy, death for many of us. And given the way that crony capitalism works, death for the civilization and environment that sustains us. Adapt or die. It's Darwin's birthday. Happy birthday, Charlie. And thank you for introducing us to this frenzied little toy maker, evolution. It's Lincoln's birthday, too. The man who assured us that the struggle and death of so many to save the Union would result in a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Happy birthday, Abe. We'll see what we can do to prove you right. To do so, we will have to evolve. May it be so. This month we are taking our offering